Alright, it's paint correction time. And the problem I'm facing is I keep my 4runner outside, obviously, because the MR2 and the bike lives in here. So this thing has to spend its whole life parked outside. More specifically, it's parked on the side of the road a lot of the time. And we've got a system coming in tonight that looks like rain at about 2 a.m. And so the problem is, because I'm going to be ceramic coating this, I need to have the proper cure time. G-Technic says that crystal serum needs 12 hours to cure before it gets wet. So I'm kind of backtracking from that. The hourly report says the rain starts at 2 a.m. So realistically, I don't think I need the full 12 hours. I think that's more of a conservative estimate. But I want to try and get the coatings on right after lunch today, which means I got to knock out a full paint correction on this thing in a matter of like 2 hours. Good news is, I mean, it's my own vehicle. I already know what I'm in for. And it's already been corrected before, so not a whole lot of damage to fix. Let's take a quick look at the condition of the paint first. Turn the lights off. That's one trick for you. If you're using an inspection light, you want to have the lights off in the shop if you can. So overall, I'd say it held up pretty darn good, considering this thing is, I haven't even clay barred it or anything other than wash it for over 2.5 years. And I mean, this thing is winter driven, it's taken off road, so it does have some marring and some swirl marks. I mean, there's no question about that. Water spots, I have to say, very few, which is a big thing for ceramic coatings. That's a great way to tell if it's a good coating or not. Now there is the odd deeper scratch here or there. I've noticed down here is definitely a little bit more damage than the rest, just because it's down low. This is also where people's doors are going to bang into if somebody's parked beside you. I try to take it easy on this thing and park at the back of every parking lot and everything, but there's only so much you can avoid. There we go. But overall, it's just kind of some haze, light swirl marks, nothing major. It's really held up well. Which is good, because I don't have a whole lot of time to chase defects on this. I want to be able to just knock this out and jump straight to the coatings this afternoon. This rear hatch, obviously, I mean, we've got rust bubbles down here. We're not really clinging to much. I'm not spending much time on that, just because, well, there's no point. I mean, rust is worse than any scratch, right? So that's gonna have to get repainted at some point. This side is more of the same. Oh, hey, how you doing? One thing down here, we've got a pretty big scratch. I don't know if you can see that. Right there. So there's rubber all over this from that stupid clay block that I got to get off before I start polishing. That's a deeper scratch. You can feel that right in the plastic, and I can tell by the way the corners are kind of rounded off. This was there the first time that I polished this thing. So I've already hit that pretty hard. I'm not going to bother pushing that much further. I'm just going to touch on it a little bit, but we're going to pretty much leave that one in there. It's too deep to safely remove. And over here on the other side of the hood, again, more of the same. You can see we got some haze, a little bit of swirl action, but really not bad at all. I mean, this still looks like a lot of those freaking YouTube detailers after shots. Wait, am I a YouTube detailer? So as far as tools of the trade and strategy goes, I've got, this is a short throw dual action polisher converted down to use 3-inch pads. This is my Boss big 21 mil long throw, that's your big boy. And also we got the Rupus Hybrid Nano here. This is expensive, but it's an absolute lifesaver for tight spots. Pads, we're going with the typical Meguiar's microfiber cutting pad. This is me for the compounding stage, and we're going to be finishing with the Rupus foam finishing pad. And I've also got the little small ones for the Hybrid Nano. Guess I should probably explain. I'm going to be doing a 2-step on this, even though I don't think it needs a 2-step because the damage is so minor, but because I need to move so quickly, I'm going to mow it down really quick with a compound just to get the heavy lifting out of the way and really just to save time. If this wasn't my own vehicle, I probably would be a little bit more gentle with it, but it's the perk of working on my own rig for once. So I'm going to be hitting it with Meguiar's M100 for a compound. That combined with the microfiber pad is kind of a sledgehammer. so I can move really quickly, and the minor damage that's in this is going to come out like nothing, just because it's more of an aggressive setup. Then I'm going to follow it up with the Old Faithful McGuire's M205 finishing polish. That's what we'll be using the foam pads for. Again, because it's my own vehicle, I already know the history on it, but if you're new on the channel, you haven't seen me do this before, I'm going to get a couple of paint readings just to show the thickness of the paint, just to explain that process if you're interested. Alright, so this is my paint depth gauge. Come on, focus. You can do it. I know you can do it. Yeah, there you go. That's my paint depth gauge. And this, basically, it's a magnet. It'll read off metal surfaces. As you can see, 117 microns. But this kind of plastic stuff, you won't get a reading on plastic. This is a cheaper gauge. It doesn't read, it only reads on metal. It'll do steel or aluminum, but it doesn't do plastic or fiberglass or carbon fiber. So the idea here is you want to start with a door jamb, just because the manufacturers put the least amount of paint in there, just enough to make it the right color. And so that gives you an idea of what would be considered really thin. And there you have 72 microns. $67. Okay. So that would be what I would consider way too thin to even touch with a machine. And now if you come up here, we're going to get some readings. 100 microns, 115, 116, 123. So as you can see, we're fairly consistent, and nowhere near the readings that are in the door jambs, which is what we would consider really thin paint. So even though I'm technically going to be hitting this kind of aggressively, I'm going to be moving so quickly that I'm really not going to be removing much paint at all. That kind of comes down to feel and experience, but if you're just new to polishing your paint job, I wouldn't recommend that you work the way that you're about to see me work. I would much rather you stick with the traditional kind of slower pace, do your crosshatch patterns, and take your time and be really gentle with it. Me? Well, like I said, I got a deadline to hit. This is my own vehicle, and do as I say, not as I do. We're going to be cutting some corners, we're going to be hammering down on this sucker, and basically we're going to beat this paint job like a redheaded stepchild. So that'll be fun. So I wasn't kidding when I said I was going to be working pretty quick on this. I'm not sure if I'm going to end up showing the entire uncut process here on the hood, but I believe it took me about 11 minutes to do the entire half of the hood, and that includes all of the edging and everything. I think I ended up doing the entire compounding phase on the whole 4runner in just under 2 hours. So like I say, this is not a textbook paint correction job. This is not really, this video isn't to teach you how to polish your paint. It's more just to kind of show you how I do it. And I again, if you're a beginner to this whole detailing thing, I wouldn't recommend you work like this, but I know what corners I can cut, what I can get away with, how I can save some time. But if you're just starting out, seriously, you should probably be watching the videos from the other guys that will teach you to break things down into smaller sections and work slower and be really gentle. I think I already explained which products and machines I'm using, and so this is just going to show me kind of cycling through all of them. I like to start off with the edges on the outside first. For me, it's a lot like coloring a picture when you were a kid, and you start from the outside and work your way in, kind of do the edges first. And I guess it's kind of important to stay in between the lines when you're polishing a vehicle too, I guess. That's just the way I like to do it. There's no really rhyme or reason why, it's just the way I like to work. So I'm starting off with a 3-inch pad and the short throw machine here. All of these machines, including the little hybrid Nano, in this case, on this vehicle, I'm running them all wide open throttle. Full speed, like I think they all go up to speed 6. Actually the Rufus might only go up to speed 5. But I'm grabbing them, turning them on, and then cranking the dial full blast. And the reason I can get away with that is you can see how fast my arm speed is. I'm not staying in one single spot for very long at all, if at all. Obviously the two main things that you need to manage when you're correcting your paint are the residue, which is going to be the spent compound and product, as well as any clear coat that you're removing. And really, it's a matter of controlling the dust. The other thing to manage is heat. And when I'm running these machines wide open throttle, you got a lot of friction and a lot of heat being built up. And so because of that, you're going to see my arm speed is moving really quick to keep the heat dissipating across the panel. And every once in a while, you'll see me kind of focusing in on one little area and kind of scrubbing away at something. That's just because I'm looking in the light as I'm polishing. It's kind of counterintuitive, but I tend to look kind of behind my polisher, where I'm looking where I've been as opposed to where I'm going, which is just kind of something you learn over the years. It doesn't come naturally, but I want to see how the paint is reacting after I've polished it, and so I'm looking into the light, into the reflection of the light that I have behind me. I've got my work light behind the camera right now. So I'm looking through that to see what's still in the paint after one pass. I can kind of sort of look through the product itself, look through the polish itself to see what the paint is looking like before and after. And if you see me scrubbing away in one little corner, that's because I found a deeper scratch or something that just wasn't, it didn't quite look like it was finished or something that I was happy with yet. And so I'll scrub away and put a little bit of extra pressure on it and kind of give it the gears. And again, the scrubbing motion isn't what's going to remove the defect. It's more a matter of me just not staying in one place. And I don't want to hold the polisher, especially when it's a wide open throttle. I'm not going to let it just sit there in one spot and just heat up that one section of paint, because it's just going to create problems and it's just not safe. So you see me doing the scrubbing motion. That's not because I think that that's going to give me better cut or better bite. It's actually kind of the opposite. It's keeping heat from building up in that specific area that I'm putting extra pressure and spending a little extra time on. Again, this is all kind of more advanced stuff, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you try this out unless you're really comfortable and you have some experience under your belt. I'm not trying to toot my own farts or anything here, but I just want you to be careful with your own vehicles and don't try some kind of crazy technique that you saw me do on my own and end up jacking up your own paint job and getting mad at me. Just don't do it unless you have some experience under your belt. Now, really, my goal would be to use the long throw machine with the big 5-inch pad on it for as much of the vehicle as I can, just because that long throw and the larger size pad just means that I can get more work done quicker. I can hit a bigger section of a panel at one time. But to do an entire vehicle just with the one machine and do it properly and keep the correction tight and get into all the little corners, it's just not possible. So all the big flat sections, you see, I'm going to go to that big machine as often as I can, as long as it'll reach everywhere, just because it's the most efficient machine, the most efficient way of polishing. Then I'll step down to the 3-inch if that's just not going to fit, or if there's a contour or kind of a curve in the body, that'll affect how things go as well. You'll see me when I I get to the front fenders. Yeah, the big machine will fit on those fenders, but because of the body lines and kind of the styling lines, the 3-inch machine just has better contact on the curves and the edges, so I stick with that throughout the entire fender. But on big sections like the hood here, I want to go straight to the big machine as much as I can, and then I'll just do the edge work with the smaller stuff. For the 1-inch machine, I'm using these little blue foam pads from Rupus, and honestly, I don't really like them. I don't know why I use them still. I think I keep forgetting to order or cut some 1-inch microfiber pads, because that's what I use for cutting on every other machine. I would rather keep it consistent. I just keep forgetting to get some. These things, I guess they do the job kind of, but they don't have the cut that microfiber does, and I just don't really like them. I prefer to compound with microfiber pads pretty much exclusively. So you'll see here, I'm going back and working on this one extra area with the only reason I chose the 1-inch pad there is just because that's what I had in my hand at the time when I saw that scratch, and so I just wanted to go back and work it a little bit more. Then once I've done the entire half of the hood here, I'm coming through with my inspection light. I don't inspect it with a light after every single pass. I'll just do an entire area. Sometimes I'll even leave all of the compound on there, and M100 is pretty easy to work with. And so I'll just do a full section at a time and then come back and inspect it after I'm done. If I have to do anything extra, at that point I will. Now, one thing that I find really interesting that you really don't hear many people talk about online is how to A, remove an old ceramic coating, and B, how do you know when it's gone? It's hard to convey it in the video, but while I was compounding this thing, I could feel the first pass, it felt like the pad was almost gliding over top of the paint as opposed to like biting into it and actually cutting. And that's how the first pass went. And as soon as I went over it the second time, I could feel a noticeable difference that now I was doing work. Now I was digging in, and now I was dealing with the actual paint and not the leftover ceramic coating that was on top. And here on the grill, you can kind of see in the light on the top part there, on my first initial pass, it almost looked like the compound was kind of hazing, and it was almost like it was kind of flashing on top of the surface, which is definitely something that I've never seen on anything else. The only time I've ever seen that is on a ceramic coated vehicle. And as soon as I go over it again the second time, you'll notice that the compound starts to behave like a normal compound on a normal panel. So that's how you can tell that the ceramic coating is gone. You can feel it, and you can just see the way that the product is behaving on the panel. But that first pass, it was definitely noticeable. You weren't just dealing with a regular paint job, so I thought that was pretty cool. Alright, I decided to throw the GoPro on my head and give you guys kind of the POV view of doing the actual paint correction. You get to see what I see here. And like I mentioned, on this fender, I'm pretty much just using the 3-inch pad or smaller. I'll use the 1-inch for a couple tighter areas. You'll notice I've got the hood open at this point, and that's just because I don't want to overlap onto the hood. And anytime that you can move a panel that's side by side with what you're working on, if you can move it out of the way, then you don't have to worry about the fibers of your pad kind of ticking onto the inside of the next panel, because they will reach in between the gap between the two panels, and that's really thin paint on that leading edge as well. So anytime I can open up a panel just to have a clear kind of a fall off edge as opposed to banging into the panel that's next door, then I just open it up and get it out of the way. I'll do that with the doors as well too. And you see me, once again, I keep coming back to this one area because in the light I can see that there's still a couple of deeper scratches remaining there. And so I'm just focusing on that. I'm really paying attention to trying to work clean here and trying to manage residue. So I'm coming back and blowing out my pad often with compressed air to get any paint or spent compound out of the fibers. And it also helps to keep the fibers standing up. You'll find if you're using microfiber pads that it doesn't take very long for them to get kind of matted down, and once they get kind of shiny and matted down, you lose all of your cutting power. At that point, you're just peeing into the wind. You're really not getting anything done. So you want to keep the fibers standing up, and giving it a quick shot of compressed air is a good way to do that, and it keeps it nice and clean. So now it's time to inspect my work here, and you'll notice that the scan grip light that I'm using, you can adjust the temperature on this for the actual color of the light. And I have this set to more of a yellowish kind of a tone, basically to mimic the sun. I want to recreate what the sunshine is going to show me. And then on the left side there, you see the work light that I normally use. And that's more of a bluish tint to it. It's more of like I guess like a 6500K light. So I like to use both colors just so I can make sure that there isn't anything that's going to show up in a weird lighting situation that I'm not catching with the one light that I'm using primarily. This is another thing that I don't normally show that often, but I always wipe down the panel with alcohol before I start polishing, just to make sure that there isn't anything left over on the surface. Just because if there is any kind of greases or oils on there, that can clog up your pad, and it'll diminish the level of cut that you're going to get big time. So up here on the A-pillars and kind of along the edge of the top of the doors, I'm not really hitting that hard at all, because the first time that I corrected this thing, there were some really deep scratches up there. Looked like claw marks from an animal or something trying to climb up on top of the roof. And I hit them pretty hard to try and remove them and at least minimize them as much as I could. So I know that area has been already worked pretty hard, and I'm not going to push that any harder. Just one quick pass just to make sure that the old coating is gone and to clear up any kind of light scratches or swirl marks. And here you can see I'm taking a second to swap out my pads, and I'm going through quite a few pads. I don't use one for the entire vehicle, that's for sure. In this case, I think I did half of the hood and the fender, and then that little section of the A-pillar, and I was already swapping pads out. And that just comes down to I like to work clean, and I don't like to clean pads on the fly while I'm working. That's just a waste of time to me. I'll clean them up when I'm done. Another great place that the 1-inch pads come in handy is around door handles like this. That's another area that, aside from doing it by hand, you're just not going to get in tight there with a bigger machine. I did that top leading edge of the door as well. Also because I didn't really feel like taping everything off on this thing, so using a 1-inch foam pad allowed me to get close to that window molding without getting a bunch of compound scrubbed on there. Then I'm jumping over to the 3-inch here to kind of do the rest of the edges. And you see me opening up the door here just to make sure I'm getting all the way over to the edge. Like I mentioned with the hood, if I can get that door away from the other door, I don't have to worry about the fibers of the pad kind of flicking the inside edge of the adjacent panel. Then I'm just going through, and any sections that it feels like the 3-inch pad is going to fit better, while I got it in my hand, I just keep on going and do that. I'm not wiping off the product in between steps here, or in between machines. I'm just leaving it on there. Sometimes I'll dip back into an area that already has some compound still left on it from using a different machine, just to grab a little extra product if I need it. And again, this isn't textbook, but this is just a way that I save time. This compound is really easy to work with. I'm working indoors here as well, so it's never given me any trouble with sticking to the surface and being hard to wipe off or anything. Then once I get all the tighter areas done, it's right back to the big boy here, the 5-inch pad. Now at this point, all those wide open sections of the door it's just like hitting the freeway now, and I can just hit that stuff real hard and fast, and it doesn't take very long at all. If you haven't watched my other paint correction videos that I have on here, which chances are you probably haven't if you're one of the 4runner subscribers here, but I don't use a typical crosshatch pattern like most people do, just because I'm more focused on keeping my pad flat and consistent pressure on a panel. I would rather go with the flow of the panel and the curve of the vehicle than focus on getting an exact crosshatch pattern all the time, because a lot of the time when you're doing that, whether you're going north to south or east to west, you're going against the flow of the panel and you're really not getting that much work done anyways. So at this point, it's just more of the same. You've already seen me cycling through the different machines, so not much more to talk about here. I'm going to shut up. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'm going to catch you on the next one. Next video, we're going to be doing the refinement polish and probably jump on the ceramic coating in that one as well. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one.